As much as I love creating original works of art, sometimes it can be a fun and interesting change of pace to try and replicate the style of a piece of media you really enjoy. That's why in today's video, I'm going to be showing you how I both drew and animated this character you see here in the style of a game that's a timeless classic even almost 20 years later, Super Paper Mario. I have actually drawn in the style of Super Paper Mario before, and that's because it's fun and easy to replicate. The simple shapes yet expressive animations just really capture me. Aside from the charming art style, I mentally return to this game from time to time because it just keeps drawing me back in. It is both heartwarming and way funnier than it has any right to be. I actually think it might be funnier nowadays than it was when it first came out. The humor in this game, that is from 2007, has held up shockingly well and is a testament to just how ahead of its time it was when it came out. Now with the introduction out of the way, let's get into the speed paint. To start off, I go to the Spriters resource and pull up the sprite sheet for Peach directly from Super Paper Mario because I am trying to exactly replicate the style of the game. The reason I used Peach and not one of the brothers is because they have very Mario-like proportions, for lack of a better word, and Peach is more humanoid, so she is the one that I'm going to be using as my base. I go ahead and erase all the stuff I don't need because the visual clutter was driving me insane. And then I go ahead and I will trace exactly over the model. You might think to yourself, why are you tracing? Isn't tracing bad? And the answer is no, because I am trying to precisely replicate the exact same style. So if I want it to look like it came from the game, I am going to base it off the art from the game, and the easiest way to do that instead of eyeballing it for 3 hours is just to throw a sketch on top of it and call it a day. Here I'm starting with the head asset, so I'm just tracing Peach's face shape and then coloring in Alcora's skin tone. I wasn't sure if I wanted to add her stripes and freckles because they're a little detailed for a game as simple as Super Paper Mario, but I elected to keep them because they are such an important part of her visual identity. I went ahead and started the bangs, trying to use the same kind of large hair shapes that Peach uses since they have a similar hair shape, and that will be important later when we animate it. I went ahead and did the back hair piece, which wasn't as important because it wasn't going to be moving much, but still needed to be there. I went ahead and started adding the little piece of face framing bangs just by the side of her head. Alcora doesn't really have this, but I thought it'd look good in the animation. Then I went ahead and did the ears. I again struggled with how much detail is too much detail for this style, but ended up keeping the ear tufts. Then we get to the braids, and the braids were lots of fun because I had no visual references for what I wanted to do. As far as I'm aware, there's no characters in the game that have braids like this, so I was completely on my own. I started off with these simple heart shapes. I added the tuft at the end. I actually don't end up going with this at all. I end up completely redrawing them and simplifying them, which you're going to see right here. I don't even keep the tufts at the end. I just keep those 4 kind of heart shapes and call it good enough. I think that's probably for the best since a lot of characters with more complicated hair types have blocky or circular, like bits of hair, as opposed to like complicated strands. I go ahead and color the hair. I actually use the base color of her hair as the shadow because, as you can see on Peach, there are some shadows towards the lower parts of her hair. But because her hair is so dark, I didn't want the shadows to be black, so I went ahead and used the highlight color as the base and then used the base color as the shadow and kind of worked around it from there. I again wasn't really sure how to do the gradient in her hair because no one in Super Paper Mario has gradient colored hair. I elected to just alternate purple and black to make it look like she had different colored strands without getting super complicated with it, and then just copied it over to the other side mirrored. Coloring the back hair here the same way I colored the bangs. I put it all together and it's starting to look like her here. I color the fur. I actually did seed and give myself a little bit of a gradient here on the tips of her ears because I wanted the tips to be purple and I didn't think it looked too out of place. I'm constantly comparing it to the sprite of Peach because I wanted to make sure it looks like it's from the game. Her earrings also gave me trouble. At first I wasn't sure if I wanted to include them, but her dangly earring is such an important part of her face that I elected to keep it. I just simplified it down to this kind of gold pearl. Later I'll add a dangly part. Instead of adding her dragon cuff, I just added a couple gold earrings that referenced it but didn't actually get into the details. The eye I traced right from the sprite sheet. And here you'll actually see me referencing a clip of Super Paper Mario because I wasn't sure how the blink cycle worked in this game, and I knew my animation would have blinking, so I wanted to make sure that the assets I got set up so the open and closed eyes would do what I needed them to do, and it was actually time to animate them in live 2D. Remember, if you're ever doing something like this where you're trying to replicate the style of a game, it is super duper important to reference the game that you are trying to copy, especially if you're trying to animate it. The pieces fitting together on the sprite sheet and the pieces moving in the actual game can look very different, so make sure that you know where each piece is going and what they're going to be doing. Moving on to the body was pretty hard because I had no idea how I was going to simplify her corset. I also was pretty afraid to do the folded down part of her jacket because I knew I wanted her arms to move, so that's going to be a pain that I deal with later. For now, I just simplified the butterfly corset and kind of just throw it under her braids and call it a day. The legs also gave me a little trouble because Peach's legs aren't really visible and the Mario Brothers don't have legs. It's kind of just like feet connected to their body. So I had to improvise, and I actually referenced some older pieces that I did in this style. I think it's passable. I went ahead and copy-pasted the leg when I was done because that is how the game works. They don't have left and right legs, it's just the same asset, not even flipped. Then I get to the arms. The arms are a little weird because Peach has shoulder and upper arm and hand pieces. I didn't feel like doing all that because I knew I wasn't going to be animating that much with her arms, so I just did one arm piece, copy and pasted it to both sides, and you'll see later how I do the sleeves as well. The arms came out a little too long because I was referencing Peach, so I do end up shortening them a little bit, but that happens later. Here is my fight with the jacket. I ended up just making it one piece and laying it over the body so that I could keep it simple and move it later if I needed to. I think this ended up working. I also omitted the things like the buttons and the little dangly in her jacket because it was just too much detail for this style. Here are those sleeves I promised. I end up kind of simplifying the ruffles down to just this white triangle, and I actually don't even use the glitter that's normally supposed to be on there. Again, just too much detail for this style. One of the most difficult parts of doing things in such a simple style is, again, trying to figure out what to keep and what to omit. You want it to be readable as the character, but you don't want it to look out of place, and it's a very delicate balance. I did allow myself a little extra detail on her train. You're barely even going to see it, but the butterfly patterning is such a prominent part of it that I elected to keep it. Again, you won't really see it at all, so it didn't even matter in the end. Next is her tail, which I drew straight. If you're ever going to be animating something that's going to be wagging or curling, always draw it in its longest, straightest form so you can actually make it wag later. This is true for both this video and for all live 2D animation, by the way. This is where I added the rectangular part of her earring. This isn't really in the style of the game, but I thought it looked good the way it was, so I allowed myself a little wiggle room there. Here I am comparing her to Peach again. I ended up editing her face a little because I didn't like how close together her eyes and mouth were. Make her a little shorter. I kind of just edited the proportions to look a little bit more like Alcora. And here we have the two of them side by side. This is just me kind of looking for style over consistency, and I think it came out pretty well. The last part of the speed paint is renaming all the layers. For any kind of animation, it's always going to be like 20 minutes of renaming layers. It's no fun. I hate doing it. It's the most tedious part of any animation. But if you don't do it before you import it into your program, your life is going to be terrible. Here I transition into live 2D. I imported the PSD into the program, and the first thing I do is make a texture for every single image. This is the most important part of any live 2D project. If you don't do it at the beginning, you will be dealing with issues for the rest of your project. I add about 1 million rotation deformers because most of the animation that we're going to be doing is simple rotations in the style of the game. So to things like her hair, her arms, her braids, her head. Right now I'm working on the breathing idle animation, which is quite bouncy in the game. I referenced Peach a lot for this, so her hair bounces up, her bangs kind of fluff out. Since Alcora has these big cat ears, I make those kind of bounce as well. Her arms kind of come up and down slightly into something like, not as extreme as an A pose, but they kind of have this up and down float. Then I animate the eye blink, which according to the game is this 3-frame open, half open, and then closed animation that I'm going to be rigging later. Just know for now that it isn't smooth. It is kind of like a frame by frame, 1, 2, 3 down, 2, 1 up. And here we get into the actual animation. So here I am setting about a second to begin because I didn't actually know how long the animations were. I didn't time them. This is all very vibes based. I just look at it over and over until it looks correct, until it looks like it matches the game, which ended up being about a second and a half because a second was too fast. When you're animating, you're going to be looking at the same loop over and over and over again. I check it hundreds of times, so you see a lot of me just watching her idle and making small tweaks. That's a lot of what animation is. Here I go ahead and add some rotation deformers to her tail. I know that rotation deformers, that kind of movement, wasn't used in a game from 2007, but I wanted my model to have a nice swishy tail, so I again broke the rules a little bit just to have that little detail, and I think it came out really well in the end. Here I am messing with the timing because it didn't look good for a while. It was kind of jittery and I had to change quite a bit. I originally baked the physics in, it looked terrible, so I did everything by hand in the end anyway. And here I am watching the animation a million more times, making little edits to her hair movement, and then going back and watching it again to see if I like the changes or not. Here I am adding a little bobbing breathing animation, which isn't in the game, but I just felt like it was missing, so I added it anyway. Here's that blink animation I promised earlier. So again, this is like a frame by frame animation, so I use a stepwise movements instead of like a curved movement that is the default in Live 2D. I didn't want smooth transitions between frames, I wanted hard, abrupt frame by frame, and so I went ahead and did that. I wanted to add one of those flipping animations that is so characteristic of Super Paper Mario, but it did not play nicely with my rotation deformers, so I just skipped it. We're gonna jump back into Clip Studio Paint for a moment so I can actually paint a background. I was looking for assets, but because the game is so old, all of the textures were really tiny and gritty looking, so I went ahead and took this space background because Alcora is a star god, and drew it myself with the stamp tool. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do next. I really liked that kind of royal looking palace with the pillars and all the white stone, but I decided I could not be bothered to draw all that stone. And I also didn't like the dark background because Alcora's colors are already so dark, and I thought her hair was starting to blend into the stars, that I changed them to a pale pink and blue instead, which I think allows her to pop a lot more. I play with those colors for a minute, and then I break into some files for a Super Paper Mario project that I actually started several years ago and abandoned because I got bored with it. So I take an old cloudy background and I resize it down and I just overlay it just to give a little extra something to the background. It's really subtle, but I liked it. I didn't feel like drawing stone, I got pretty lazy, so I ripped this stone from that old same project and used a gradient map to make it white to kind of give the idea of the temple, even if I didn't actually draw it. And then we go back into Live 2D. So here I added a talking animation, which is literally just the mouth opening and closing. Same as the eye, it is a frame by frame 1, 2, 3, 2, 1 animation that you're going to see a little bit later when I add the wave. Here I am adding the wave, and at first I wasn't even sure if I wanted to do this because I wasn't really sure how to animate her jacket moving with her arm. It took a little experimentation, but I was eventually happy with how it went. I used a warp deformer here, which again doesn't fit the style of the game, but doing nothing with it looked even sillier, so this was my compromise. I don't really think it sticks out that much. I think it fits well enough. I also added a little bit of happy eyes, like an eye smile, if you're familiar with Live 2D, because this is something they do in Super Paper Mario as well. It's very subtle, but it adds a little something. And again, it's not an animation, it's a frame by frame where it either changes and then changes back. Here I am keyframing that little wave animation. I'm adding the bounce to her hair. I'm adding the movement so it flows because the wave is kind of bouncy in a way that's hard to describe. It took me a while to get it right, but I'm pretty happy with how it came out in the end. I did mess with the timing a lot because, again, I didn't time the animation, so it really was just vibes based. I just changed the timing until it looked right. And then I go ahead and combine my idle animation with my wave animation to make a looping animation with both of them. By the end, it ended up being about 4 seconds long. I was having trouble getting the keyframes to align, so that took some trial and error as well. But in the end, again, I'm very happy with it. You will be very familiar with the fact by now, if you have not animated before, that it really is just a lot of trial and error. It is just watching it over and over and over again, making tiny little adjustments, and watching it over and over and over and over again to see if you like those adjustments, so on and so forth. This is me copying and pasting that idle animation so I could make the animation a little longer because I wanted it to loop a little slower. I didn't want her to wave every other second. And we're about coming up on the end here, so now let's reveal the final project. Thanks for sticking with me this long. I hope you enjoyed the process and the end result. I am so happy with it. I think it came out so cute, and I'm excited to do more projects like this in the future. So again, thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again soon.